Okay, perfect. All right, well, do you want to start, Cindy?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. This was just to give you an opportunity and to get ready for the Midyear Showcase. We have two speakers that'll be joining us with us here. They're both our pharmacy residents. They'll be able to share their experiences with that. We'll have time for a question, and I'll leave it up to them to start talking. Thank you.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming in. We are just really quickly going to be talking about sort of mid-year showcase, residency, search, all that kind of stuff for you. My name is Alec. I'm a PGY1 resident at the Medical Center, University of Maryland Medical Center. So been here for about 4 or 5 months now. Graduated from UNC last year, and happy to be here, and hopefully be able to help y'all out a little bit.
Hi, I'm Connie Liang. I'm the current PGY2 Ambulatory Care Pharmacy Resident. I completed pharmacy school in New York, and I did my PGY1 in a VA in New York. So happy to be here today to help out as well.
All right, so we'll go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to be focusing a lot on the residency showcase at midyear. That's sort of like the big thing, especially as a P4. That's kind of like the main reason you want to go, especially if you're not like presenting any posters or anything. So here's a big disclaimer for you all. Neither Connie nor myself have ever done the midyear showcase in person. This is the first time in the last 2 years that it has been an in-person event. So we have done it virtually. Surely some of our tips and tricks will pass along and will transfer well, but a lot of our experience will be different. So don't like stress about that. Don't worry about it. Everyone else doing the Midyear Showcase also has not been to an in-person event, and I'm sure lots of the RPDs and the faculty and everyone that you'll be talking to also has never been to one. So you have the opportunity here to sort of make it new and make it your own. So nothing to stress about, but just wanted to sort of as a disclaimer. So we're going to go through some different phases of preparation for the showcase. So right now, talking about before the showcase, and we're going to talk about what to do after the showcase, during and after the showcase. So first of all, the most important thing to remember about the mid-year showcase, the residency showcase, is that you are really the focus here. It's not necessarily for the programs to identify which candidate they're going to offer interviews to, or to make their rank list right here, right off the bat at mid-year. It's really designed for you as a candidate to narrow down your list and to figure out which programs you do and don't like. So it kind of takes a big load off your shoulders. It's not necessarily something you have to really stress about, just making sure that you're getting the most out of it. So as you're preparing about it, as you're preparing for the showcase, you need to think about what is most important to you. So you really want to take some time to think about it. Why are you looking into a residency? So take some time and think long and hard about what really matters to you, and use that to narrow down your initial search. Then what you're going to do is you can use the online residency directory, which we'll talk about in a second, to figure out which programs you're interested in. So you'll come into mid-year with a long list of programs you have some passing interest in. And you'll use the residency showcase to cut that down even further into what you're looking for. You're not necessarily going to find a perfect program for you. There's lots of different things out there, and maybe there isn't one program that has everything you're looking for, but you'll find programs that have the majority of what you want. So think about factors that you are looking into. Residency class size. Do you want to have a lot of co-residents? Do you prefer working in smaller groups? Do you like having a lot of people to support you, or do you prefer working independently? Do you want to work in ambulatory care or an acute care hospital? Do you want to work at a community pharmacy residency? Are you looking for an academic medical center or a community hospital? And then you also want to find out more about your preceptors and mentorship. So a lot of these things you'll be able to find online beforehand. And some of these things, the things that you're more looking for, the vibes and the feelings, you'll have to get at the showcase and at info sessions. And also look into things like elective rotations and what PGY2 programs the hospital is offering. So if you're interested in pursuing a PGY2 in a specific area, make sure that the program, you don't have to absolutely make sure, but it might be interesting to look into which programs are offering electives in those areas that you're interested in, or which have PGY2s if you're interested in early committing. Then of course, look for location. Is it a place you would want to live? So what you need to do beforehand, like I said, research the programs, figure out which ones align with your list of preferred qualities, which have the things that you're looking for, the elective experiences, location, that kind of stuff. And then you're going to prepare your materials for midyear itself. So whether that's a list that you're going to carry around, a notebook for writing things down, and then if you need a CV, if you want to get business cards to bring to midyear, if you want to, take a look at the map on the website and map out your route to make it around the showcase to find exactly where you want to go. All the stuff to prepare for ahead of time. Then you're going to come up with some questions. So as you're coming up with questions and researching the programs, here's a little screenshot at the bottom from the residency directory that's on ASHP's website. Very helpful for sort of narrowing down your residency search. So you can search by all kinds of different things. And something that's super helpful, I didn't realize until halfway through my searches, you can actually download your searches as like Excel files, which makes it super helpful for organizing your search as you go. So each residency will have a bunch of different things listed on their on the ASHP residency directory. Things like when the residency starts, when their application deadline is. It's all can be a little bit different for different programs. And then you have things like the number of positions they're offering, the stipend, and then some just statistical information about the hospital. What's the staff like? Is it profit, nonprofit, academic medical center? What their average census is. All this kind of stuff is very nicely organized at the residency directory. So definitely use that as your main source, and then always check the links. They'll have a link to the residency website where you can get more information.
Okay, so preparing for midyear is really important because you don't want to spend your time there while you have time to do other stuff, researching all the programs. So, finding a list of programs that you're interested in is really important. And what I did was I created like a spreadsheet or a Google sheet, something like that, or a chart or table to help keep your organized notes and thoughts. And really think about what you find is important about each program. This can be anything like what Alex said about residency size or opportunities offered. And when you condense into this chart, it makes it easier to see and easier to follow during midyear. Next. So I've never been to a in-person midyear. However, when you think about how many programs there are in our country, there are a lot of programs. And so in this venue, there are only 3 sessions that are spread out over 2 days. Each site only has 1 time slot within these sessions. So, you can already imagine how crowded it would be during that day. So really find which programs you're interested in, use that spreadsheet to keep you organized. I looked up the sessions and I included it here. So Monday, there's 1 in the afternoon. Tuesday, there's 2. There's 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. So really planning out where you're going to be going, how you want to navigate the traffic can really help make your time much more efficient, and so that you don't miss, talking to like a program that you're interested in. So in terms of what to bring to midyear, it's highly recommended, basic things. So be friendly, have a smile when you meet someone, have a firm handshake. Business cards are not necessary, but it's nice if you have one that you can give to programs that you're interested in or people you talk to. It is highly recommended to have a CV. Not all programs may be asking for it just because of the volume of people that are going to the program, but in case they ask for it, or in case you wanted to give someone your CV, it's good to have it with you. I think bringing like a purse or a bag to keep your CV and small things can help a lot as well. A water bottle, paper to take notes if you need to take notes for anything, and then also make sure you clean up your social media. So sometimes you don't want programs looking you up through whatever means, whether it's Google, Instagram, or any other account platform, and seeing anything that you don't want them to see. So make sure that you stay professional. In terms of dress code, I'm just going to talk for the ladies, like professional wear. So like a suit, if you have one, skirts that are knee length, shoes that are comfortable, but also professional. So definitely not sneakers or sportswear. Don't wear anything that's too short. So like how you would dress for rotations, that kind of professional wear is what you should dress for mid-year. Make sure that, you're professional at all times and you're not too casual.
And similar for the guys, you're going to want to, dress like you would at rotation, but a bit better. I would recommend definitely a shirt and a tie. And I would also highly recommend wearing a suit or a sport coat. Just you want to give off that professional look and kind of treat it like an interview. Again, it's not like, I don't think that the programs are out here making notes on what color tie everyone wore when they got there. But you want to make that good first impression. You don't want to be the guy who shows up, in a t-shirt and shorts, because they will remember that. So make sure you look nice. Definitely recommend a suit or a sport coat. And then for everyone, good hygiene. Make sure your breath smells good. Make sure your hair is brushed or combed. Clean, not necessarily clean shaven, but well groomed. And then, of course, this is not, you might run into these people all throughout the conference. So make sure you're dressing appropriately and behaving well throughout the entire conference and really your entire time. There'll be lots of people from pharmacy there. You don't want to make any bad impressions, whether it's at the showcase or at the casino.
So this is similar, the same thing that we talked about, but just with some like visual examples. But like what Alex said, basically, you don't want to leave a bad impression. I feel like people, but like if you're meeting so many different people, the people that you have a bad impression of may stick out more than the others. So you don't want to be that person who they remember for something unprofessional. External recruitment events. So there are a lot of programs that conduct open houses that are virtual, where you get to meet oftentimes the certain preceptors, you get to meet the RPD, the residents. And I think a lot of those are actually happening now. So if you haven't already, this is a good time to do your research, look into the programs you're interested in and see if they have any open houses. Usually, I know some programs have only one day, but others have multiple days. And this can really help you, ask a lot more questions about programs that you're interested in and see if you really would be interested in the program. So these are a great way to learn about the program, what they can offer. So I highly recommend that you look into that if you haven't already.
I would also add that something to be aware of is that not every program is going to be at midyear. There are some big name programs that are not attending midyear this year. So just be aware, make sure you're doing your research ahead of time. Do that now if you haven't already, because these sessions are happening now. And then during the showcase, the part that gets fun and the part that Connie and I have the least experience with, we'll do our best and draw on experiences from prior residents that we have consulted for help with this. So what is the Midyear Showcase like? It is big, it is crowded, it is busy, and it can be a little bit scary. You saw that map before. It is a big room with a lot going on. You can see in this picture here, there is a lot going on. But take a deep breath. It's not as intimidating as it appears at first sight. So just some general tips. When do you want to go? Keep in mind, it is going to be busy at the very beginning. Everyone wants to get in, make sure they have time for their biggest, most popular programs. They're going to be real busy, but they might be busy the entire time. Of course, it is going to be a little bit less busy towards the middle and end as people have sort of checked things off their lists and are filtering out. Just make sure that you're aware of how much time you're taking at any one place. If you're going to visit a booth and there's just a huge line of people, and you feel like you'll be waiting there 20 minutes just to get a word in, then come back later. It's okay. They know that it's busy. Just make sure you're aware of the time because it does go by pretty quickly. And then, like I said, the big programs are going to be busy the whole time. but just come back around, see if you can get a word in edgewise, and just ask your questions that you have that you prepared ahead of time. And then, a little pro tip, stuff right at the beginning, right by the entrance, might be busier, so you can just go right around that and see if the programs that are located in the back, away from the entrances, have less people at them at the beginning. So what do you want to do once you actually get to talk to someone? Well, after you're waiting in line, you're just typical interview skills, business interaction. So seek eye contact. They will very likely have some kind of sign in, maybe like an email list or something like that, if they want to collect that kind of information. So leave your name, leave your email address if possible, and then introduce yourself. Good firm handshake is always a good thing. That might not be the case with COVID and everything this year, but just acknowledge a good business professional greeting. And make sure that you're practicing your introduction, your elevator pitch, to tell them about yourself. Who are you? Where are you coming from? What are your interests? So that you can kind of start a conversation and find out if this program will be a good fit for you. You don't want to be caught off guard because they're going to ask you this kind of stuff, so make sure you're prepared for that. Then who do you talk to? Anyone who is there. So there'll likely be residents, current residents, there will be preceptors, and then the residency program director is probably going to be there as well. You don't have to talk to the RPD. If they're not there or they're talking to someone else, that's okay. Don't feel the need that you have to make an impression with that person. You're there to gain information, so you can get that information from anyone that's there. I would recommend, once you talk to someone as you're leaving, write down who you talked to, especially if you had like a good conversation. If you made any kind of impact or they made an impact on you, that can be good information to bring up in an interview that, hey, I love this program because of this conversation I had with this person. They might like hearing something about that, like in a letter of intent or an interview. So make sure those good conversations you're having, that you're making a note of it. And then what do you ask? This is tricky because, like Michael Scott here, sometimes you get into that situation and you realize you don't actually know what you want to ask. So you're really, oh, sorry, Con, you got this.
Yeah, I mean, so with questions that you ask is really based on what you want to learn about the program, but it's always good to have an arsenal of questions just in case you're in that scenario where, if they're looking at you because they think they have a question, and then if you don't have a question to ask, they might think that you're disinterested or not prepared. So the questions that you ask for different people can differ. So for residents, some questions can include, what is your favorite part of the program, to get a sense of what they liked about the program. What's one thing you would change if you could? How is the support system like? To kind of get a sense of the culture of the hospital or institution. Were there any surprises or anything that didn't meet their expectations? Asking about the typical day can be helpful to understand parts of parts of the rotation, and also asking what they do for fun to get a sense of, how's the city like. Also, do they do anything for fun? Do they have time to do anything for fun? And then for preceptors, asking about interactions with residents, how often they give feedback or how often they meet with residents. What's the biggest strength of the program in the preceptor's perspective? What the previous residents are doing, to get a sense of, where they've gone on to do in the future. And then what the typical day of a preceptor is like. What do they look forward to when they come into work? So having a list of these questions can help a lot. And a lot of these questions can be applied to different programs. So it's always good to have more than less. And really important is to not ask questions that can be answered through looking at the program's website. So make sure you do your research prior to talking to these programs, because it does look bad if you're asking questions that can already be found online.
Yeah, I think the tricky part is you want to ask these really direct questions, right? You want to say do you as a resident hate your life? Are you miserable, right? But you can't ask that. That's not professional. So you kind of have to frame your question in a way that's okay, what am I really trying to get at, and what's a way I can ask that? So like Connie said, what do you do for fun? Do you have any time for fun is what you're really getting at. Be what do you like about the city you live in? So try to think about what you want and have you ask it.
Yeah, and it's like almost really reading between the lines, where you have to, kind of just like look at their gestures and see how enthusiastic they are about their program or whatever they're talking about. Other things to ask, and this is looks like mainly for it can be for like the RPD as well, is how the structure of the pharmacy department is like. Are there satellite pharmacists? Is it decentralized? The relationship between the staff versus clinical pharmacists. Things like that are great questions to ask. Also, asking about the electronic health record can help as well, so that you can understand, what you're getting yourself into, what kind of program you might be expecting to be using. Asking about the culture of the hospital. And something that I personally love to ask is how pharmacy friendly the institution is, how welcoming other departments like the providers and the nurses and dietitians are for pharmacists. Are there any sort of collaborative practice agreements that are set? Any like other policies like pharmacy to dose, to draw on the pharmacist's expertise, and how receptive are providers to pharmacy recommendations, for me to get a sense of the culture of the hospital, and also, how big is pharmacy there? Are we well respected? Okay, so etiquette is something that's very important. I feel like we talked about that earlier as well. Make sure that in the beginning, like what Alex said, have your elevator pitch ready, because they'll probably ask you to introduce yourself. Make sure you shake their hands when someone introduces themselves to you as well. If someone else is if someone else is talking, do not interrupt them. That is rude, and you probably will be remembered for that. And in a setting that's so busy like this, unless you do PPS, it's really hard to get one-on-one attention or time from these people. So most likely you will be talking to one or two people in a group. And so it's important for you to, let other people talk first. And then usually, I know online it was like this virtually, and I can imagine it's like this in person too, where they kind of go like one by one, where each person takes a turn to ask their questions. So make sure you have a question prepared for that time, and make sure that you're not repeating questions that other people next to you just talked about. And then make sure you're showing interest in the program through words, body language, to show that you're enthusiastic about that program. And, the theme of this entire conference, make sure you're respectful to everyone and remain professional. Okay. So for these, like what Alex said in the beginning as well, this is for you to learn about the program. So focus on what the program can offer instead of, talking about yourself. Unless you're asked about it, don't give a whole soapbox about your experiences, why you're good for the program, things like that, because this is a time for you to learn more about them. Make sure you're polite and positive again. So always remaining, professional throughout. And if you do have a business card, you can offer your business card to people you talk to, but it's not 100% necessary. It's like, you don't really have to have it. And people may give you business cards. It may be helpful to keep it in case you have any questions after the fact, and you want to reach out to someone, then you can talk to them through like looking at their business cards and finding their contact information. And because of the volume of people, they might not take your CVs or resumes, or they may take it but might not even look at it. But I think it's good to have, just in case someone asks for it. You don't want to be that to be the one time that you don't have it. And make sure you say thank you, and again, stay professional.
Yeah, I think the etiquette is so important. I remember thinking back to like some of my interviews for residency. Lots of them are in kind of like a group setting. Like I had one where I would work together with another applicant on like a case, or like answering questions that way, because they really want to know like how you're interacting with other people. Like that's a huge thing for them. And again, like this isn't about you, but someone who is rude and isn't respectful of the other candidates asking questions, that's not a good impression. You don't want to be the guy who leaves a bad impression.
Yeah, so how do I remember everything? Because you're probably going to have multiple programs on your list. You probably have a lot of different programs you talk to. You may think that you'll remember things at the moment, but then it's really easy to forget since you're talking to such a high volume of people and programs. So jotting down important notes or quick thoughts about programs or people that you've interacted with can really help, especially if you have that spreadsheet. Just having a column where you can take notes, after you talk to the people can help as well. And things that you can jot down include facts that you learn about the program that weren't listed in the websites. You can also write down the people that you've met or like what you've talked about, interactions that you had, and how you felt about the program. Was it the vibe that you were looking for, or was it like the opposite of what you were expecting? Things like that can really help you narrow down to what programs you actually apply to, and can be helpful as well when you're, writing your letter of intent, where you can mention the interactions you had with the people from those programs. So again, like I mentioned, taking notes of the people you spoke with can definitely help as well. And in the future, if you meet them, you kind of can look at like what kind of interaction you have with them and bring it up in conversation to show that you're interested in the program and you remember your conversations. And don't try to stand out. So like, make sure you're not trying too hard because you don't want to. So as a matter of fact, if you stand out, it's because you did something that they'll remember you for that you don't want them to remember you for. Like I mentioned earlier, first impressions are important, and usually they're more likely to remember, oh, that person who did that and I really didn't like that, rather than like all the other people who are fine. So try not to stand out and don't try too hard.
That being said, like, don't be afraid to like make connections with people for sure. You'll have conversations, and especially with like current residents you can relate to maybe a little bit more. Absolutely, like take that time to ask them genuine questions and get to know them, but do not be a tryhard and do not stand out for doing something bad. Absolutely. So what do we do after the showcase? After it's all said and done? Thank you and follow up. So thank you notes after showcase can definitely be like a yes or a no thing. The residency program directors and everything are talking to a ton of people at this. So they're not expecting to get hundreds of thank you notes after the showcase. But if you had a specific conversation or you had a question come up after, don't hesitate to reach out. The RPDs and the preceptors, their information is listed on the websites for a reason. If you have a question, ask them a question. Make sure it's not a question that can be answered elsewhere. But feel free to reach out as necessary. And then if you have any other follow-up or memorable things, bring that up in a letter of intent or an interview as well.
I just wanted to mention also, a lot of times, if you genuinely express interest, they're more than willing to answer your questions. So I've also known of like some RPDs who are more than willing to set up a time to meet with you if you have further questions, and if you feel like it'll benefit your understanding of a program if you did like a virtual meeting. So definitely reaching out afterwards, having that connection can help a lot as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Especially if you have an actual question, they're happy to do it. Don't feel like obligated to set up a one-on-one meeting with every RPD you're meeting with, but they're happy to answer questions. All right, and then what's after mid-year? A lot. If this is where things really start to pick up, we're just sort of, this isn't the focus of this particular meeting, but we'll kind of go through what happens after mid-year, the actual application process, just so you're aware of what's coming for you. So pretty quickly after mid-year, after the actual conference is done, you're going to have to finalize the list of programs you want to apply to. Pay special attention to the due dates and the extra requirements that some of them have. You should do this research before mid-year, because some of them have due dates like within a week or a week and a half of mid-year, and you really have a real quick turnaround time from deciding you want to apply there to actually applying. Some have additional requirements. A few programs will require like an extra letter of recommendation, where most have 3, but some might require 4. Some might require an additional like essay you have to write or something like that. So just be very aware of what those requirements might be. If it's like a special kind of transcript, like some will require as an official undergraduate transcript. Just be aware before mid-year what those requirements are. Then you're going to want to finalize your CV. Even after mid-year, you can update it again, even if you were handing out copies. Finalize it, ask multiple people to review it for you. Want to be very, very careful of any typos or errors. And then just overall like phrasing, what's the best way? What do I want to put? What can I leave off? Get opinions from multiple different people. And I would recommend getting the opinion of people within the pharmacy profession, and then have someone outside of pharmacy proofread it as well, just so you're having as many eyes on it as possible. And then the letters of recommendation. So in Forecast, which is the website that you use, it's kind of like Pharmcast you use to apply to pharmacy school. In Forecast, you will enter in the contact information for your letter writers, and then they will send the request to the letter writers. And so the letter writers, they don't actually like type up a letter and mail it anywhere. They just go into the website, answer a specific set of questions about you. So all that comes through Forecasts. Obviously, make sure you have confirmed your letter writers before you actually submit that into Forecasts. And then don't be afraid to send them reminders about due dates and any other information you think would help them. So for my letter writers, I asked them to write a letter. I sent the Forecast, and then I sent them kind of like a little brief about myself. So for my preceptors, I sent them the evaluations they wrote about me. I gave them a list of any projects or anything I worked on while I was on rotation with them. And then I explained to them what I wanted out of residency. And that allowed them to really draft a letter of recommendation that was most helpful for the specific programs that I was looking for. There is a way in Forecast to list a specific letter writer for a specific program. So you can, if you had a preceptor that did their residency training at one of the places you're applying to, you can ask them to write a specific letter to that institution. And that way they can personalize it and say, I did my training here. This applicant is a great candidate for this institution because this specific reason. And that would help the institution a lot. I am going to put a link in the chat. This is a website I used when I was doing this whole process. It's a blog written by not my classmate, someone who's a year above me in pharmacy school. And it's just, she goes through the whole residency application process. And I just found it like tremendously helpful and just a bunch of tips. And it worked well for her and it worked okay for me too. So I would highly recommend taking a look at that for information on interviews, letters of recommendation, just very helpful. And then, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Like you were talking about letter of recs, I just wanted to say, make sure you give your preceptors adequate time to write it. Because think about it, it's like the holiday season, like December, and you don't want it to be late. So I generally last year, like a few years ago, and last year I try to give like at least a month for them, if you can, to have the time to plan out when they're going to be able to write that letter of rec, so that's not late.
Yeah, it is a significant ask on the letter writers to do it. So make sure you're giving them plenty of time beforehand, and then send them reminders as needed. You'll get notifications from Forecasts once they've been submitted, but don't be afraid to send a reminder. Okay. Here, do we have any questions about any of this so far? There'll be time for questions at the end. I just don't want to cut anyone off. Yeah, Sonia, do you have a question?
Yeah, so real quick for the letter of recommendations, what type of I guess diversity should we have in that? Like, who should we ask? Is it better to just ask like for example, I'm doing clin track, is it better to just have all 3 letters as my clinical track preceptors, or should I have maybe a faculty in there that I work pretty closely with over the years, or what do you recommend?
So I can give you my opinion, and then Cindy or Connie can jump in as well. The advice I was given was for a clinical residency, they are most interested in your clinical experiences. So all of my letter writers were preceptors from my 4th year of pharmacy school. If you have a very close relationship with a faculty member and you maybe did research or something with them, you could definitely consider that. But I ended up having, one of the programs I applied to was required 4 letters. So I ended up having 4 letter writers. All of them were preceptors.
Yeah, I think having at least 2 clinical would be ideal. I also know some programs that require at least 2 clinical. So if you don't meet that cutoff of 2 letter of recs from clinical preceptors, then sometimes they might not even look at your application. So looking at requirements is important, but ultimately I think it comes down to who can write you a strong letter of recommendation. So like if you have, if you already have 2 clinical letter of recs, but then the last one, you have a clinical preceptor that, you didn't really have a great connection with versus some like your your employer, or like some faculty that is not clinical, but knows you really well, can speak to your strengths, then I think it's much better to have that the faculty rather than just, going for the clinical preceptor. So really comes down to like who can write you a stronger letter of rec. But I think having 2 clinical ones is ideal for going for a residency.
I was just gonna say, I completely agree with at least 2. I don't know that you have to have all 3 from clinical. There's not a right answer to that. So you could choose to do that. I think it really depends on your rotations, right? Because not everyone's lucky to get like that many before mid-year to have that many clinical rotation. I know I've talked to some students who've only had 1. So what do you do in that situation when you only have 1 clinical rotation? So I don't want you to be alarmed that you have to have 2. But it would be nice if you could think about like people who would have seen more of a clinical side of you too as well, like whether it's through work, if you were working at the hospital side or everything as well. But yeah, absolutely okay to use like your faculty. You can use your advisor or to someone who did research web as well.
Yeah, definitely agree. That was a great question. Mine just so happened to work out that I had the people who could write me the best recommendations were clinical preceptors. And I actually, now that I think about it, I did have my boss at my job also writing a letter of recommendation. So I agree, at least 2 if possible, but really at the end of the day, whoever can write you the best letter. We just have sort of like a timeline of events here about applications and the match. The only thing we want to sort of emphasize is that to remember that different programs have different due dates for their application and forecasts. So you may have to be submitting some even before Christmas. So keep an eye on that very closely. The majority of them are due around New Year's, a day or 2 before or after that, but each one's a little bit different. And then we have the whole submitting your rank order and then match results. But that all comes after interviews and ranking. And then after phase 1 of the match, which is the first time where rank lists are compared and run against each other, there is a second round of the phase. So if you don't match anywhere in phase 1, there is a second round where you can go and look at programs who do not match. There's usually a considerable number, a decent variety that you can look at. You will typically get in touch with them and then rank them as well. And then just to remember, emphasize so you don't forget, each program has a different submission deadline. Make sure you are double checking that so you don't miss anything out.
I just wanted to also add that it's important. I don't think it hurts to like double check the deadlines and comparing, what ASHP has on the website to what's on forecast to if you get any brochures from the programs, because sometimes it takes a while for things to update and you don't want to miss a deadline. So I think it doesn't hurt to check on multiple platforms just to confirm that there's like one deadline. And if there's any clarification, then you can reach out and clarify early on. So forecasts, I remember when I first used it, it was a little confusing and overwhelming. Also with me being nervous about applying for residency, just everything combined, it was a lot. So, one tip is to fill out all the sections. There's like a few sections and we're going to go over it later briefly, but it asks for like co-curriculars and basically things that you already have in your CV. Even though you're going to be uploading the CV, I do recommend filling out those sections. You don't want anyone to hold you accountable for not filling it out. And it's something that you can just use from your CV. So I think filling out all the sections are really important, and you want to make sure that your application is complete. Also, generally you want things in reverse chronological order. So newest events first, and then going down in order to oldest events. Transcripts, so official versus unofficial transcript, make sure it's official from the school. So the school should directly send it to Forecast. It shouldn't be you mailing it or you sending it yourself. And I really advise you to do it early because sometimes it may take time for the school to send it to Forecast and then Forecast to process it and upload it into your application in your website. And so definitely do it earlier on. You don't want to not have it there when you're submitting your application. So give it a few weeks, I would say. And then the cost of the initial application is $110, which includes 4 program applications that's covered within that $110. And then if you're applying to additional programs, so like the 5th program, the 6th program, it will be $43 per program after that. And then when you sign up for the match, it's a fee of $160. And you must register with NMS before applying to residency programs. So I think we included that in the timeline earlier. So make sure that you have your own schedule and adhere to it so that you're not missing any deadlines. When you're uploading documents, some general tips, make sure it's not password protected because you want them to be able to see what you're submitting, and use the PDF versions, because I noticed that, like, you know, if you use Word documents, sometimes the formatting gets really funky and you want them to see the clean copy of whatever you're trying to submit.
Sorry about that.
Next slide.
Um,
Sorry. Yeah,
Sorry, I accidentally scrolled through all the slides.
it's okay. And then when you're uploading these documents, make sure that you're uploading it in a way where it's named clearly so that you know what you're submitting. We're gonna go over it later. I feel like it's hard if you don't visualize, but essentially when you upload these documents, when you're submitting applications, there's like drop-down menus with, you know, which CV you want to include, which letter of recs, which letter of intent. And the worst thing you want is to send, you know, the letter of intent from one program to the wrong program by accident because you didn't name it properly. So triple checking that is really important and making sure that you're on top of whatever you're including and uploading. And yeah, we're gonna go through it with like pictures going forward. So this is like the page with like your profile and information about yourself, your school, etc. So make sure that you fill everything out and it's completed. In this page that is on right now, this is where you include, so what you have to do is you have to enter your school of pharmacy or whatever school that you're in. And then where that circle is, there will be an icon that will show if you didn't submit your transcripts yet. So what you're gonna do is you would press on that. It takes you to this form that you print out or send to the school. And then you would need the school to send it either via like parchment or whatever means they use to send your form that you printed out from this website with your transcript to Forecast. And this form allows them to identify that this application is like, this is your application. So I think it'll be more self-explanatory like when you sign up for it, but you will be able to see an icon there that takes you to a form to send to the school, who will send it to Forecast with your transcript.
It's less complicated than it sounds.
Yeah, for sure. And just be cognizant of completion. So make sure you're completing your application fully. And there's a legend here that shows like these dots. And if it's completed, it'll have this orange dot there. So make sure that everything's completed prior to sending your application in. So this is what I was talking about in terms of after you already submit, you already like uploaded your letter of intent, and the letter of recs are in already. You also uploaded your CV and everything else, supplements, etc. This is a page before you submit your application where you can choose which CV that you want to send. So there's like drop-down menus, and that's why naming becomes important because you want to make sure you're sending the right document. And then there's one section for personal statement, letter of intent that you want to include. So again, like, you know, sometimes including which program this letter of intent for is highly recommended because then you know this is what I will be sending this program. And then you can also choose references. So for me, I know all of my programs only ask for 3 references, but I asked 4 preceptors for letter of recommendations. So this is where I get to choose which letter of recs I wanted to send to which program. And then lastly, registering for the match. I think it's also pretty self-explanatory. Like once you submit everything, you register for it and then you click submit. Yeah, and this is like a nice page to look at to kind of like see what the status of your all the documents you're trying to submit are like in. So for example, the letter of recommendations from preceptors, it shows you how many are complete, how many are incomplete. It also tells you if they received the transcript or not. So I found myself monitoring this page a lot after I already did everything and was just waiting for them to update or waiting for my letter of rec writers to submit my references. These are just some like websites that are helpful. There are so many resources that are available. I know like on Forecast, there's these pages that teaches you how to navigate forecasts, things to expect, deadlines as well. So any of those websites can really help if you have any confusion or questions too.
I would say surprisingly, the Forecast customer service or like tech support was actually helpful. I had a question. So like if you have different like programs with different deadlines, it's not very clear in Forecast that you can submit once to like one programs and then later you can submit to other programs. So you can do that. It's not super clear in Forecast that it's possible, but it is. You can, but just I like clarified with the customer service and they were helpful. So if you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out. And that leads us to our question for you. What questions do y'all have for us that we can help you with? Any part of this process at all? Mega, do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you guys for that presentation. That was awesome. I did have just 2 questions. The first one was about the transcripts. I know that there's a way for our school at least to like request our transcript from like SURFs or like whatever website. Do we have to request from that website and then after on Forecast, or is it just Forecast, or like is there a certain order of that, or is it just Forecast that we have to do? And then my second question was I believe someone mentioned PPS at one point. I've only heard certain people that are like doing fellowships at the moment mention that. Could someone just explain a little bit more about what PPS is and how we use that?
Yeah, so for the, Connie, if you want to take this away, you got it.
You can if you want.
So I can at least answer the transcript questions, and that, at least my recollection of when I did it was that you will download a form from Forecast. That's not requesting a transcript or anything. That's downloading the form that you will then send to whatever the website it is that University of Maryland uses to process their transcripts. You just like upload it as a PDF, and then the transcript processing people, they will use that to then send your transcript from the university to Forecast. That's my understanding. That's how I remember it worked. I think there's really just like a routing number or something that you put into the website, and then it just goes like mine happened in like 15 minutes or something like that when I did it. That's my recollection.
Yeah, I think it is like that. And that form kind of identifies that like this is the application they're going to attach the transcript to, so that they can identify that's you. So it's almost like a messenger system where you're downloading a form and then you send it to the school basically, or whatever platform you're using, and then it gets sent to Forecast. And then you asked about PPS. So I did PPS last year, and it's basically a platform where it's almost like an interview where you get like a 30-minute session with programs that also do PPS. And just a disclaimer that not all programs do PPS. And so it's like a platform that you can sign up for. I think you have to pay extra money. I don't remember how much it was. And then once you make your profile, you kind of can match with programs where they can reach out to you if they're interested in if they see that your interest aligns with their program, they might reach out to you as well. And if you're interested as well, then you would schedule an interview with them, or like a time to meet with them, where they get to know you a little, you get to know them, you get to ask questions. And a lot of people take like this opportunity because you get 30 minutes, I believe, of time individually with like the residency program director or with the residents as well. So with that time, you could answer all your questions and things. And this happens all throughout mid-year too. So people use it for, I believe you said fellowship, residency interviews, but also people use it for jobs as well. So it's helpful to look at, especially I feel like if you're going for out-of-state programs where you might not really know much about those programs. PPS definitely helped me narrow down my list when I was going for out-of-state programs.
I think you hit like most of the I was going to mention with PPS, if you don't mind me chiming in, is that for residency interviews, when you say interview, it's more like an informational interview. It's not like a weeding out process, so you don't have to be stressed about those. It's more just to kind of get to know each other, and you can make more of an impression as opposed to being at the showcase, because like they were talking about earlier, showcase you barely get a few minutes to talk with them on this one, so that's kind of nice. But don't stress. I mean, if you've been hearing people from the fellowship side of it, it is stressful when they go through PPS because it's their first round before they for their that's when the employers will decide are they going to offer them an on-site interview and everything like that. So you may have heard that, but that doesn't apply to residency for the most part. I think some people are starting to do that, but I would say most or it's very clear whether or not they're going to make an actual interview and ask you like behavioral type questions and whatever and everything like this one. This is more to be like a more informational gathering for both sides to kind of get to learn about you. So it's a little bit less stress compared to the fellowship interview, in case you were worried about that. But I agree with Connie. Just be careful because not all PGY1 programs do it. University of Maryland does not do PPS for the PGY1 program. We do it for some of our PGY2 program that are interested in getting to learn about the applicant pool because they have a lot of applicant pool here. But yeah, so just if you're thinking about doing PPS, check and see who is participating first and see if you're interested in any of those programs before you pay that money. You can actually see who's participating in the PPS.
Yeah, it's something like $200. And I did not PPS looking for PGY1s. I actually don't know anyone that did. But if there's a specific program you're interested in that is doing it, then consider it.
I do have to say though, like make sure you're not going in completely unprepared either. It's like interesting because for me, like when I PPS, all of them ask like at least 1 or 2 interview questions about like situational or something like that, which kind of threw me off guard, but I was glad I prepared for it because people were telling me like, oh, sometimes they ask things like that. So definitely don't prepare like you would with like an actual interview, but also make sure that, you know, you have like you have your CV at least that you know like what's on your CV in case they ask you or anything like that.
That's a great point. But yes, I totally don't mean that they'll be unprepared for sure. Yeah.
Anna, do you have a question?
Yes, so I got a couple of questions regarding the letter of recommendation. I'm not too sure how it works. I know that you mentioned it a little bit in your session, which is very helpful. But like, is it something that we send through the forecast platform to our preceptors or whoever we want to ask for the letter? And then does it come back to that forecast? And I'm not too sure how it works to our final application in order for us to submit. Can you please just walk us through that?
Yeah, so how my process went. So like first I asked the preceptor or whoever I wanted my letter of recommendations from, my references from first. And once they gave me the okay that they are willing to write me a letter of recommendation, then on forecast, there's a location where you could put like their email, their contact information, and like a little message or blurb. And then after that, once you submit that, I think it sends an email or something to the preceptors or to whoever you want your letter writers are. And it's like an application for them to fill out where they can fill out there's like some questions that they can answer and things that they can write. And after that, once they submit it, it's like an application for them too. It goes to forecast and it shows up there. So it doesn't go to you. So you don't really know what they wrote, but it does go back to forecast and it will show up once they write the letter of recommendation.
Oh, that's how it works. And then I also have a question like, is it an independent process from the other parts in the forecast application? Do I need to have everything finished? Because I don't know if my preceptors can view all of those informations before, or just like the link for them to write the letter for me. I don't know if they work like those processes are independently work, or you see what I'm saying? I don't know if it's, I'm
Yeah, no,
confused.
that makes sense. So it's independent. You don't have to have your whole forecast application complete for them to write the letters of I don't think they see any of that stuff. You do want to make sure they have like an updated CV so they can write a good letter of recommendation, but you don't have to have like your letter of intent completely done and the whole forecast application filled out for them to write your letters. You just have to be registered and have like, I think probably paid a fee at that point to do it.
Oh,
And
I
just
see. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
And just to clarify, that you do have to make sure that all the letter of intent of the letter of recommendation had to be submitted by the deadline too. Is that right? Okay, I thought that's what. So I agree with what you said completely, but I just want to also just caution, just make sure to gently remind your letter of recommendation people what the deadlines are for this one, in case you. And I think you can actually track who hasn't done it or everything, because you have to submit as one package by the deadline. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can even see like if they've opened the email, like if they've like gone to the link. But yeah, you do. So like if you have a program that's due earlier than the others, make sure you're telling your letter writers that like my earliest deadline is this day. Sonia, that's your question.
Hi, one more quick question. So going back to the transcripts. So obviously like for our fall grades, like for our clinical rotation grades, those won't be in there before the applications are done. So is that okay? Like, would they be fine with just looking at your first 3 years of grades? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they want whatever you've got.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Anna.
Sorry, I have another questions.
Sure.
Because yeah, I came to the showcase, the local showcase previously, and I talked to one program who told me that in the CV they want it to be very detailed. So they want specifically something that I do on each rotation, the journal club that I do or something like that. But I think it's my first time hearing that. I don't know if it's true for everyone, but I also heard from other programs they want just the highlights of what we do instead of a lot of details. So I'm just asking for your opinions and your experience of how it works for you and what I should do in that case.
Yeah, I think there's a fine balance you have to strike between providing too much detail and not enough detail. I'd be happy to hear what anyone else thinks. What I did is for each of my rotations, I had 3 bullet points. And I tried to make them interesting bullet points. So like on an internal medicine rotation, everyone knows that you're like rounding with the team and making, therapy decisions, but try to be specific about the things you're doing, and try to make it exciting. What are you doing that's sort of outside the realms of a regular rotation? What makes this specific and what sets you apart? And specificity is always good. I don't know that you need to list every single thing you did every single day, because that's a lot. No one is going to be able to read all that. But if you did an in-service on this specific topic, then say like I taught an in-service to a team of like 6 medical residents or 10 nurses or something like that, whatever it was, on this specific topic. So you're being specific and you're telling the things you actually did that was sort of made it a unique experience.
Yeah, I agree with the fine balance. I also did 3 bullet points for each rotations when I applied for PGY1. But make sure you're not like writing stuff just to fill up space. Make sure it's something that's meaningful, like what Alex said. So if you feel like you're gonna write something, but like it doesn't really matter, and then you feel like it's not impressive at all, you're just putting it there to like add a bullet point, then I think it's better to not include it, because these people are reading so many different CVs, and if they're reading it and they're getting bored and they feel like this is like meaningless, then they're not going to want to continue reading it. So make sure that it's things that it's specific enough where like, you know, it shows your skills, it shows what you've accomplished, but make sure it's things that are relevant. I also included like a section for presentations and like clinical presentations or like things that I did on rotations. I know like it's really dependent on how you want to format it. Like I also included a section on projects I did and the impact it had on whatever I would like, whatever the project was on. So there's so many different ways that you can format it, but just make sure that you're like clear, succinct, and showcase whatever you want to showcase and your skills and, you know, your experiences.
Yeah, I was going to highlight the last part of it because I don't think it really matters what you do with the rotation stuff. But the problem with having bullet points is that I'll be honest, employers actually tend to skim the CVs with this one because they're reviewing so many of it with this one. And so they may miss some of the stuff that you're putting in your bullet points with this one. So if there's like major projects that you did, like you did a journal club, you did an in-service and all that stuff, I completely agree with Connie that you should put it in a different section where you like for example presentations so that it's very clear and you put the title of the presentation and so on. Same thing with special project. If you did an MUE, do not hide that in a bullet point. That's so much work you did. You do not want to put that in a bullet point on your rotation. Even if it applied to the rotation, you really should be putting that in your research section or in a special project section because you put so much work into it. And that is actually something you're going to be doing in residency. But that's an experience that you did that was fantastic, or formulary review, for example, or something like that. So I just want you to be cautious of getting too dependent on the bullet points because people will miss it. I'll be honest. Yeah.
Great point.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Yeah, I want to follow up with that questions because I'm actually not doing the clinical track. And part of my rotation is not really too clinical related as of this point. So when I hear that feedback from that program, I was a little bit, disappointed. I don't know, it makes me kind of, less of a good candidate in the eyes, because if I put the things that I do in the rotation so far, it is about community, it's about, FDA. So it's not really too clinical related. So that's why I'm so confused. I'm really struggling with my CV as of now.
Yeah, I totally get it. And honestly, what I've told students in the past, I wouldn't recommend putting things that are already expectations of the job. For example, okay, you worked as a pharmacy technician at a certain pharmacy, and you're putting, okay, I verify these orders, or not verify, but you dispense these orders like that. But that's kind of something I would have expected you to be doing as a pharmacy technician. That's a basic function of the technician. So I don't know that I would put the bullet point there. That's what they were talking about earlier, about making it meaningful, like the bullet point. So like seeing you had led the initiative for the COVID-19 vaccination and efforts, that's definitely something that would be, you could put as a bullet point. Or you did MTM services at your, something that's not very common to all community sites. So you can talk about the MTM services that you helped with, or something like that. MTM stands for medication therapy management, by the way. But yeah, you get what I'm saying. So I would focus on those sort of things, or don't even put bullet points then. If it's pretty much what's a basic, if you didn't do anything beyond what you're expected to do for the rotation, I don't know that I would call that out. Yeah.
Any other questions? I'm gonna put my email in the chat here if y'all have any questions. And Dr. Deb, if you're sending a recording out and you want to include that as well, I'd be happy to answer any questions from anyone.
Yeah, I'll include my email too, so feel free to ask anything.
I know Sonny had a question, but there was another question I wanted to clarify since we're recording that. I know that a couple of students have asked me independently about, like, there's a virtual mid-year showcase that's going to be after the in-person showcase at mid-year. But this one, there's a virtual one at on December 15th. Not all programs will do the virtual showcase on December 15th. So So some of the students were asking, is it okay to just go to the virtual showcase and save money and not go to mid-year for this one? And I think it's really up to you what you want to do. I think I've made this clear to a lot of students. You don't have to go to mid-year to try to apply to residency programs. So if you don't want to spend a lot of money and you don't have that money, because as they mentioned, forecast is very expensive. I don't feel you don't have to feel obligated to go to mid-year for this one. So I think the virtual showcase is a great opportunity just to kind of get your questions answered in a much more affordable way of doing things. But the only caveat is your program that you were really interested in may not be on there. So you might want to check the participating list to see if there's anything on there. I just wanted to ask you too, did you have any other advice about that or what you would do differently?
I agree with that. I would definitely like is the virtual one, is that free to attend or do you have to register for that? Do you know?
Last year was free. I can't, I don't know for this year. I can't remember. So,
I agree. Like nothing was earth-shatteringly revealed to me during mid-year. So I don't feel like you absolutely 100% have to. It's definitely very helpful and very useful. But the virtual one can be just as helpful and useful.
Yeah, I agree. And also this is just random, but I'm not sure if most people know, just so that you can allocate your time in case you want to go to other programs to look at, to like check out their booth or virtually or online. But I know that I think there's a VA showcase actually for, if you're interested at all in any VAs, for like, I think all the VAs in the country, and they have, I think it's virtual this year too, and they have this showcase. So that may be helpful to look into if you're looking for VA programs, just so that you could use your other time if you go to mid-year on like other programs that you're interested in.
Great point. Sonia, sorry about that. I just wanted to get that out of the way. You have a question still?
No, you're good. So just one quick question, because I'm not sure where to put this in my CV, but like say for like student orgs, I was involved in a lot of stuff. And I was wondering if like that stuff would go under my, like things I did would be under like leadership role, or would that be something more like community service? Like where would that make sense? Like for example, like community outreach events, like would that be something I highlight, like, oh, like I was vice president of this, I did this, or would I put that in like community service and I say, oh, I helped, like, maybe like do this, if that makes sense?
My CV, I have professional involvement. So I'm like professional organization, which I think student organizations can fall under that while you're a student. And then I have a separate leadership thing. So if you were, I mean, you could definitely combine them into one, and under each organization, if you had a leadership position, include it there. But I'd want to highlight the leadership because that's definitely something the residency is looking for. But definitely include like all of that stuff. Those are the kind of things that they want to see, is like your involvement, what you did in the leadership position you held. I would think you could separate it or combine it. I don't know what y'all think.
Well, for me, like if I were to do that, I think how I would go about it is, I remember I had a section for just like membership, like if I had no leadership position, like just member, and then I didn't list anything else. And then I had a section for like professional organization, like leadership. So things I did as, the secretary, the VP of whatever. If I was a VP and I did like outreach or community service, I would actually put that in community service, because in that leadership section, I want to talk about like things that I, started or like initiated or created as a leader. So I will actually do two different sections, even if like, you did the community service or whatever as a leader in an organization. I think that still is valuable as community service. And then you can highlight other things under leadership. That's how I would go about it. I feel like there's so many different ways you could do it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? Great questions for tonight. Sure. All right, thank you, Alec and Connie. I appreciate your time tonight and everything. And I know the students will definitely appreciate it too as well and everything. It was good. So, and I appreciate you sharing your email addresses as well and everything. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to get you connected to anyone. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks,
Thank
y'all.
you. Good night.
Good luck.